It could be that they want to tell people at cocktail parties that they're an investor. Well, it makes for a very good Twitter bio. What is a good company? Why don't we see aliens? And I knew that anyway, but you were lying to me. Don't do that. That sounds good. You give chances all the time. All the
Yes.
time. It was a
Right.
$50,000 order.
To get your first 1,000 paying customers, you're basically gotta get 10 million people to actually notice your product. Hi, Jason, the man, the myth, and not even, well, he's not the myth because his name is actually a smart bear, as what you guys know on X and as well as on his very popular blog. Jason, welcome to the Peak Podcast, man.
Thanks for having me here.
So at the Peak Podcast, we want to make a purpose to bring on people who have done spectacular things and also have this spectacular view of the world and also wants to share it with others. So I think you really ticked all of the boxes there, and I've read a lot of the articles that you wrote. So just for some background and for some context of the listeners, so you've built two unicorns, which is something that most of us can only dream of, just getting one startup to become unicorn status, but you've actually done two. How is that like, man?
Well, it makes for a very good Twitter bio. So I guess that. And just to be fair, it's definitely true with WP Engine, my current company. I've been there for 14 years. I started it. And so for sure that for Smart Bear, the first one, I did sell it when it was not a unicorn, and then it became one. So I can't take
Oh,
credit for the journey
right,
after I sold it and when it became a
right.
unicorn. So what I can say is, well, we certainly made a great start and a great basis, a great name, brand, software. Um, but I can't take credit for what happened when I wasn't there. But as I say, it makes for a great Twitter bio. And
It sure does, man.
actually, it goes to show maybe one of the good lessons of that, which is it is possible to say, my goal is to create a unicorn. My goal is to make a dent in the universe or whatever else they say in California. That's one way. It's okay. Nothing wrong with that. But I never said that. And to your point,
Mm,
here's two unicorns, and I never said that ever. Never, ever.
wow.
My idea was I want to make a good company. What is a good company? Just
Mm,
the obvious stuff. It's
mm,
growing because people want to buy it. It's profitable because it doesn't cost too much to run it, and it
mm,
doesn't cost too much to get people to sign up because they want it. Customers indicate that they want it by staying and continuing to pay.
mm.
Employees want to be there, as indicated by staying, right?
Yeah.
It's not too expensive to acquire new customers. I mean, none of this is news, new information. This is all the
Mm,
obvious stuff, but it's just that's what a good company is. It
mm.
just has these things, and for the right reasons. Like one reason why a customer could stay is because they have no choice because you lock them in with a contract or you know, or you have their data and they can't leave. Which I mean, that's one way to build a company, of course. But
Mm.
better way is they don't want to leave
Yeah,
for good reasons.
yeah.
So this is what I mean roughly by building a good company. So what it shows is that that's a good idea, and that's
Mm,
nice because you don't have to have a goal like has to be a unicorn or I failed or it has to
mm,
do this, has to do that. You don't
mm,
need to have that.
mm.
You can just decide, not just, but you can decide to build a good company, focus on the
No.
customer, focus on and whether the financials work. And
Mm,
then maybe it gets really big if indeed the market is big, the demand is there, then okay, it can
mm.
also get really big. But even if it doesn't, so what? So you've built a profitable, good company that people want to be at. That sounds pretty good at any
For
size.
sure. I mean, that's the dream life of, I guess, what's very popular on X right now is, that solopreneur kind of journey,
Yeah.
right? Jason,
Yeah,
it's like,
that's really common. And that's okay to do that too.
mm,
That's really what Smart Bear started as. I
mm,
was alone for 2 years, so I that was my
ah,
journey as well, starting out. And even when I sold it, I think there was just 12 people
oh,
7 years
wow.
in. So okay, that wasn't solo, but it was small.
Mm.
Um, Another
What's
thing
the
that
dynamics between that though? Like between having
yeah.
like a one person kind of business and then
Uh-huh.
when do you decide that you want to actually expand and perhaps maybe keep it small?
Yeah, again, I think you can either decide that, which is good, or it just happens one way or another, which is
Right.
also fine. You know, um, the way I decided to hire the first employee at Smart Bear is I could finally afford to. It's pretty simple.
Mm,
I just,
mm,
it was bootstrapped. I didn't raise
mm,
money.
mm,
Eventually, I had enough
mm,
money
mm,
to where I could pay myself and also someone else.
mm.
Actually, it was a really big order that came in, and that gave me enough cash. It was a
Right,
$50,000 order,
right.
and that gave me enough cash to go, oh, I could hire someone And if it doesn't work out, then I'll have spent all this money probably. But okay, that's the worst case is that happens and that won't be good, but I just got the money physically in the bank, so I could
Amazing,
make
man.
that attempt. And so that was the little triggering event.
Which
Um,
role was your first hired, Jason,
it was another
besides that?
engineer.
I
Yeah.
see. I see. So you were more focused on building up more products or building them faster, or what was the
Sales.
reasoning? Sales. I see.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, you got to do sales. And so either you hire somebody in sales or you got to do sales. Now,
Were you
sales can
doing the
mean different
sales? Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, for SmartBear, it really was sales because our customers ended up being big companies,
Yeah.
uh, Microsoft, Qualcomm,
Yeah.
Intuit. So you really needed sales. Now, nowadays, that can mean many things. There's even product-led growth where there really isn't a sales team, where there is later when you have bigger customers that eventually want sales. So, but even so, okay, but there's marketing and there's getting
Mm.
people to sign up and there's thinking
Mm.
about that. There's always a role where you're thinking about growth and external things and bringing in customers. That's always a thing to do.
Did you have a lot of difficulty in the sales process because because some of these big enterprises, right? Like they look at a company and say, "You got one dude running it." Like,
Yeah, that's why it's really hard to sell to enterprise if you're small.
mm,
So you have two choices. Choice one is you admit what you are, you put it on
mm,
the homepage, or at least your About Us page, maybe not the homepage,
mm,
and you're really honest about what you are. And the other
mm,
way is you lie and you say we when you mean me and all this.
mm.
Now, what I started out doing is lying
Ah,
because I
I
didn't
see.
want people to know that I was little. So as I said
Wow.
we, and the About Us page was about us. It didn't have any names on it or anything. And on sales calls, I'd say we. And I
Mm,
remember this one time there was a guy, this was at Lockheed Martin, and he was my champion. So the way that
mm,
enterprise sales often works is that there's someone in the company that loves you for some reason. Maybe it helps their personal career or they just like you
mm,
or whatever.
mm,
There's some reason why they really want to advocate for you.
mm,
It's often called the champion. You
mm,
find them and then they sort of is your shepherd through there. Okay, you got to tell this guy this, and this kind of thing. So I was talking to my champion and I remember he goes, Jason, you always say we, and I've never talked to anybody but you. And if I call on the phone, I'm pretty sure you're the only one who's going to answer. Am I right? And so I said yes. What am I going to say? So I said yes. And he goes, I knew that all along, but
mm,
I knew that anyway, but you were lying to me. Don't do that.
mm,
And so the lesson there, and this is very true. I realized this was true in general after that. After
mm,
being it shoved in my face, I realized, of course they know. Of course you can't operate like a bigger company. If you
mm,
were a bigger company, you should have your security team talking to theirs. Oh, you don't have a CISO? Why not? Your legal team should be talking to theirs, but you don't have one. Your support
mm,
team and your they should be being introduced to their customer service representative, but there isn't one. Their
mm,
account manager and their SE, but there isn't one. They know
mm,
that. They know you
mm.
don't have that, right? So when you pretend to be that, you will fail in your pretend. It's really obvious. So now,
That's
not
a lesson.
only have you not delivered on what they need, you're also a liar. This is a bad relationship. You do not want to do that. So what you want to do is the reverse. You do want to tell
Mm,
the truth. That's easy for me to say. I didn't even start doing that. So, but I learned
mm.
my lesson and then I did it from then on. Okay.
Wow.
So, and you got to tell the truth. And so then what happens is if Lockheed Martin looks and says, "What? One person? We can't do that." They're
Mm,
right. You're not a good fit. They won't
mm,
call and they shouldn't call and you don't want to talk to them. They're wasting your time because you
mm,
can't be good to them anyway. You
mm,
got to spend all your time on the actual target customer that is the right customer for you. And
mm,
that person would look at your about page and say, "Oh, good. A small company. I love supporting small companies. I
mm,
love that when I call them or I go to tech support, I talk to a founder or employee number two. I love that. I want that. It's a
mm,
reason for me to buy from you and not a competitor. That's your
mm.
target customer. And how will you find them?
Beautiful.
By saying it on the homepage or okay,
Mm,
on the About Us page so
yeah.
that they go, oh, and then you find and there you go. And then when your product doesn't have this feature and has this bug and you don't answer the phone all the time because you're not awake all the time, they forgive you because they know it's
Mm,
just you. See?
mm.
So you got to be honest. Yes, that means people won't buy, but they shouldn't anyway. They're right
That's
not to.
beautiful.
This way
Wow.
you find your people and they love you. And even when you
Mm.
screw up, they love you. Now doesn't that sound like a great relationship? I mean, and
It
it's
does.
great
It does.
financially. they'll stay. It's good. That's what you want.
Wow. Dude, there's so many golden nuggets just right there. I think a lot of founders are going to find this useful, and as well as new and young upcoming entrepreneurs who are perhaps doubting themselves, because in this world we have an abundance of ideas, right? But not enough executors. So I think if you
Mm,
can,
I
yeah.
don't know about that. There's a lot of people who
Mm,
have ideas and execute,
mm,
but there's a lot of things
mm,
in a business besides an idea and the willpower to execute.
mm,
Is the market big enough? Are there customers there who know they have the problem that you're solving? Do
yeah.
they already know that? Or do you have to
Mm,
convince them of that? Do they have a budget set aside to do it? Or do they
mm,
not have the budget? How much money is the budget? Are they looking
mm,
to buy today, like
mm,
today? Or maybe in a
mm,
year, or maybe never? They're not really looking. It's not a high priority. Or no, really, they're motivated today, and so on. That's not even all of it. There are
mm,
many, many things that have to be right for
mm,
this to work. And so I feel like there's no lack of ideas.
mm,
And there even okay, I agree there's more ideas than people who will execute and go through the hard times of
mm,
execution. I agree with that. But there's still way more people of that than
mm,
successful companies. Why? Because of these and more, all these other things also have to be in place. So startups are like a Drake equation. Like, why don't we see aliens, and then go through all the, that's what a startup's like. All this stuff has to be, if
mm,
not right, then let's say good enough, or not
mm,
a deal breaker, not zero or whatever. And it's
mm,
really hard for all those things. It's an and this and this and this. And when you say and a lot, it's really hard to get through that gauntlet. And
for
so
sure.
that's, I think, why it's hard. So what do you do with that information? You realize, oh, it's not enough to have a good idea, or even not good enough to have the passion and the will to execute, although that's still
Mm,
hard, but still not good enough.
mm,
Oh, I need all these other pieces. How quickly can I go validate or verify whether these pieces exist, whether they're right?
mm,
Or maybe my idea is roughly right, but this piece needs to be changed this way, this piece needs to
mm,
be changed that way so that the thing works.
mm,
So the chance that the very first thing I think is just completely right in every way, it sounds
mm,
small, even if I'm super smart.
mm,
It seems like I got to get out there and right. And so this is where you get into things like trying to analyze the market in some way,
mm,
talking to customers first, building something quick and fast and getting it out there to get feedback rather
mm,
than wait. That's where all this stuff starts to become smart because you're
mm,
trying to de-risk or figure out these
mm.
pieces, which probably aren't set up right to begin with. And the longer you take, the more likely it just fails.
This reminds me of the article that you wrote. Actually, I think
Mm,
I got this in my inbox. It's the problem of startups or the problem of business. It's like you mentioned. There was this one statistics that stood out to me. You mentioned that
mm,
to get your first 1,000 paying customers, you're basically
mm.
gotta get 10 million people to actually notice your product and
He
know
needs
that it can
impressions.
actually,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So
yeah.
and dude, like, and I was reading that and I was thinking, damn. So okay, so there's 70 million people in Thailand. There's much more in the US. There's much more in Indonesia. There's much more globally. But
Yeah.
to actually get traction, to put yourself on the eyes of people and to get their attention and to grab it, it's not as easy as one would think that, okay, I have an amazing product. It's gonna be I don't know, like a Salesforce competitor, a HubSpot competitor, whatnot. And for some reason, it's gonna take 1% of the market share. Yay, let's go, right?
Yeah. No, no, that's right. Now I'll say so. First of all, just to explain that to folks who haven't read the article, though maybe we link it in there for folks that are
Yeah.
curious. Um, a typical conversion rate on something like a Google ad is
Mm,
1%. Like
mm,
1% will click. That's actually pretty good, 1%.
mm. Yeah.
But maybe you get two sometimes and point 0.3 sometimes or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then another common stat is that it's about 1% of people hitting the homepage to actually buying. Now, again, that can
Huh.
vary, by product, but I have seen that number that just on the order of 1%, right? Like
Right.
approximately many, many times. And I remember at Capital Factory, which is a incubator and now co-working space here in Austin
Hmm.
where I live.
Mm,
Um, one time I did a little informal survey. I just went around and asked people what their conversion rate was. So it's not exactly
mm.
scientific data, but 1% was almost always the answer. There's
Mm,
also some other data online. So let's just call it 1%. So when you have an ad impression, 1% will probably convert. That means 10,000 impressions to get a sale.
Mm.
So 10,000 impressions to get one customer, therefore 10 million impressions to get 1,000 customers. Now,
Yeah.
two things about that. Number one, these are all very rough numbers. So any one company, like it could be something else. This is just trying
Mm.
to get the order of
Yeah.
magnitude right.
Mm.
But the second thing is, if you did something like, say, we are this company for Thailand, we are Thai, we serve Thailand, that's what we are. I would guess that some of these conversion numbers could be way higher than normal
Hmm.
in Thailand. It
Yeah.
wouldn't be
Yeah.
way higher than normal in Texas, where I'm at. They
Yeah.
wouldn't
Yeah.
care.
No. No.
But in Thailand, it would probably be higher than normal. So you might say something like, okay, sure, those numbers are fine for a generic company, generically selling to people
Mm.
in the world. Fine. So as you say, okay, whatever. Um, but if I make a hyper-targeted niche company, and just being Thai is not hyper-targeted, but it's getting there. It's a niche.
Hmm.
Okay, well,
Hmm.
niche it even further, and this
Mm.
vertical, and this, and this, and this.
Mm.
Um, of course, the number of target customers is smaller than the world, obviously,
Mm. Yeah.
you
Of
know,
course. Of
much
course.
smaller. But how special are you in that niche? How unique
Mm.
are you? How
Mm.
compelling is it to buy from you instead of someone else in that niche? I would
Mm.
say much higher than some generic thing. So
Mm.
how does that shake out? Answer is nobody knows.
Yeah.
We're making all these numbers up. Nobody knows.
Yes.
But I bet it could make up for that. So, okay, in Thailand, it might be only 1 million or even 100,000 people. But if my
Mm.
conversion rate's 10 times bigger because I'm
Mm.
special in a way that matters,
Mm.
it just balanced out. And as much as the numbers are useful, I don't
Mm.
think there's just this equation that you write down on a blog post and that's your equation. This is
Yeah.
directional and to make you think. The real lesson is what you said. It's going to take way more people than it seems. That's the
Yeah.
lesson, you know,
Yes.
right? The
Yes.
exact
Yes.
numbers or
Yes.
whatever they are, right? Um, and so it begs the question, how special are you? Now
Mm.
that's a good question. Here's another question. How expensive are those ads? The less expensive it is, the more you can run, and maybe you can overcome those numbers with lots of ads. But if they're expensive, oh wait, if they're expensive and there's not that many people, and I'm not, my product sucks. So you're
Mm.
starting to get like, oh,
Yeah.
uh-oh, maybe
Yeah.
this isn't a good idea, actually, you
Yeah.
know? So I
Exactly.
would say targeting Thailand is not a bad idea by itself. It just
Mm.
means other stuff needs to come with it. Oh,
For sure.
since you're targeting Thailand, it means you're not targeting many people
Mm.
relative to, like an international company.
Mm.
Okay, that's not a deal breaker. It just means what else has to be true?
Mm.
Um, it has to be really easy to get to those few people so I actually get in
Mm.
front of them. Okay,
Mm.
well, it might be easier. I don't, but anyway, it better
Mm.
be, whatever that means.
Mm.
And the conversion rate had better be better than
Mm.
1% of 1%. Like if that's all it is, uh-oh,
Yeah.
there's not enough.
Yeah.
And maybe it is better than that. But anyway, that has to be true. We have to go see. We have to go find out. This is what I mean.
Mm.
Even before I have a product, I need to go find out how hard is this going to
Mm.
be? If people are buying every 3 years this product,
Ooh.
oh, that's tough because I have to find them right in that moment. And oh my God, like, and most people are not interested. And on the other hand, if every month someone buys it, and the
Mm.
question is maybe this month it'll be me, that sounds good. You give chances all the time. All the
Yes.
time. People are buying,
Exactly.
ooh, better. Okay, so
Mm.
as in general, with all this kind of business advice or rules and stuff, which I'm putting in quotes, they're not really
Mm.
rule, right? They're just
Yeah.
ideas. For me, none of them are a rule. No
Mm.
matter what rule you say, I can go find lots of successful companies that don't do that or
Mm.
have the opposite,
Mm.
right?
Mm. Mm. Mm.
Question is, what is the set of things that have to be true all together that
Mm.
this makes sense? If they're all bad, that doesn't make sense, but like
Yeah, of
if this one is
course.
like, oh yeah, but then there's this other thing. Oh, okay. So it has to be self-consistent, it has to be mutually reinforcing
Mm.
and hopefully special.
Mm.
I don't even want to say unique. You could say
Mm.
unique, but how about just special? Unique is hard in this world,
Yeah.
but special, that's good. We can be special, I think. Um, so what is that set of consistent things that
Mm.
work together so that
Mm.
although there are some weaknesses in there, there's also
Mhm.
some strengths, and so it works out. It's that set. So if you say, I'm going
Wow.
to do a niche in Thailand, you go, okay, well, if you also wanted to be a $10 billion revenue company, and
Mhm.
I'm only going to do it in Thailand, I would say
Mm.
that's still maybe possible, but the set of things where that's going to work is just really small because you've picked conditions that where the Venn diagram is either empty or very small, or as I like to say,
Mm.
goggles. It's either small or it's not, there's nothing
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Okay. But then don't do that. Like pick one, like Thailand, then say, okay, well, I'm not going to build the 10 billion revenue company just in Thailand. I'm going to build a $10,000 a month company in Thailand.
Mm,
Then maybe I stay at that forever, or maybe because I'm a solar founder and I'm done, I'm happy, or maybe I expand from there. Okay,
mm.
now we're talking.
Interesting.
So
Interesting.
it has to be these connective thing. Any one thing by itself could be any one thing by itself could be anything you like.
That's
So
true.
to me, what you do with that information is you say, okay, well, what are those few things that I do want to be a solid constraint? Boom.
Mm,
Then I have to build everything else around it. I have to make everything
mm,
else work with it. What are
mm,
those few things? How do I decide? What I say is it has to come from your strengths, your passions, your assets.
mm,
What is it that you can do best? What is it that
mm,
you pour your energy into? Those
mm,
are your solid things because that's how you're going to have some kind of edge, some kind of advantage,
mm,
some kind of
mm.
efficiency because
That's
you're
true.
good at it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it has to start there with the things that you're good at, or you have a strength, you have an advantage. Maybe you have an experience in some place, or you have a skill that's special. And it could just be a skill, not just, it could be a skill like design, writing
Yeah.
code, writing words. Like it doesn't have to be some magical, special, weird ass skill. This shouldn't be that. But
Mm,
what are these things that where you're like, man, I'm better than almost anyone
mm,
at this. And what is that set of stuff? Those are the things you should pick as your solid, like, whatever I do, I've got to use this. If I don't, I'm throwing away the very little advantage I have. I mean, what does a
mm.
new founder have? Almost nothing. You don't have money, you don't have a brand, you don't have a product, you don't have customers, you don't have anything. What do you have? Like, okay, you have a couple of skills, assets,
Mm,
relationships, knowledge, you have a
mm.
little bit to throw that away when you have nothing.
Yeah.
To me, that's
Yeah.
crazy. So you gotta like hold on to that, name it, like write it down what it is,
Mm,
so
mm,
that you can say, all right, this is what I've got. Now, what else would have to be true? What else would I have to construct around this
mm.
so that I can solve this Drake equation for my startup?
No,
That's how you
mm,
decide what to hold on to, and then what needs to be molded around it, like clay.
dude, I think this is a very good kind of like blueprint for anyone to just take and just really think about all of the questions that you laid out just now. I think that was invaluable, man. I think quite a lot of times there's like right now in my company, we have this machine that links up with the POS software of our customers. Now, the friction that we face, of course, as you can imagine, is the POS partners. They don't want to cooperate with us because there's no incentive for them, right? And we have a few of our customers that's like, hey, Jedi, why don't you just build your own software? And I'm like, yeah, why not? I mean, we have the team. So we're kind of like dabbling with the idea right now. We're like starting small and we're trying to get a few customers on board. Most of them have no issues, but then I'm thinking in terms, since I've been listening to Sean and Sam and been reading your stuff, I actually started to think deeper into okay, even if we can get all of the, let's say right now we've got 300 active customers to switch from their existing systems to ours. What next? Is that sustainable? Is that enough to even feed the team? If let's say if the team was a standalone business,
Mhm.
and
Right.
how much would we have to do to acquire the rest of the? Let's say right now there are approximately 1 million active users on other POS software.
Mhm.
What is it going to take for me to take that market? And I was talking to one of my friends who's a big VC here in Thailand. He does acquisitions all over the world. And I actually asked him this question. He's like, bro, we have a lot of talented people here in Thailand. There's a lot of good engineers, very smart
Mhm.
ones.
Yeah.
And we can probably beat OpenAI as a product. So why is no one actually doing it? And he just simply looked at me and said, Jedi, just think about the liquidity that these big giants have. Think about how much money Microsoft has at their disposal.
Mhm.
Google, how much money do they have at their
All of
disposal?
it. They have all of it.
They have basically the whole world, right? Like the whole
They
world
have a lot.
is theirs. And I'm like, huh. And then he gave me the insight. So instead of you investing into a Thai startup, why not take that money, however much it is, take that and invest in stocks, in OpenAI, in Google, in whatnot, in the growth sectors that you know is going to grow 3, 5x anyways. And you sit back and enjoy the returns. And I'm like, huh, yeah, so like it just kind of changed my perspective on kind of like that build or invest kind of mindset because maybe I'm at that stage when I still want to build, but then with the time constraints with the family, with the business and stuff like that, I'm like,
Mhm.
huh, maybe perhaps being an investor is much better.
Well, I think it depends on what you personally want to do.
Yeah, yeah.
Obviously, there's one way in which he's right, but he's very wrong.
Hmm.
I mean, there's a reason why people invest in startups
Mm,
instead of just buying Google stock, which they don't do.
mm,
Warren Buffett has never bought Google stock. Why not? Is he an idiot?
mm,
No, he has a different investment philosophy. There's something else he wants to do. He wants to make
mm.
money. He's made more money than Google has made.
Yeah.
Okay. And he didn't buy
Mm,
Google because he has a different way of the different thing that he wants to accomplish.
mm,
So it depends. Like if I'm an angel investor, part of the reason I'm investing in a startup is to make money, but of course it's high risk and I probably will lose it. So that
mm,
can't be the reason I'm doing it.
mm.
Like the EV of investing in a startup is negative. Most VCs lose money. Like quite
Yeah,
literally, most VCs lose money,
yeah,
period.
yeah,
So that means the EV is negative. That's the definition of negative.
yeah.
Okay. So it's not actually a great way to make money. Now, it's very true. It's true that the very best angels and the very best VCs do make a lot of money. And
Mm,
there's reasons for that,
mm,
reputation and deal flow and things like that.
mm,
And also they're very good.
mm,
But almost everyone else doesn't, or doesn't, and certainly doesn't make enough money relative to the risk, right?
mm,
So
mm,
why do they do it?
mm.
Why do rich people often angel invest when they almost always lose money? The answer is something that's not money. Now, it depends on the person. It could be ego. It could be that they want to pay it forward. It could be that they enjoy working with younger founders who are
Mm,
excited and energetic and doing crap, and that's fun.
mm.
It could be that they want to tell people at cocktail parties that they're an investor. Who knows, right? Like
Yeah,
different reasons, different people, different
yeah,
reasons.
yeah,
Making money, um, is one, but it's actually like one of the worst reasons. It's
yeah,
probably not
yeah.
what's going to happen. Whereas you guaranteed a good story at your to tell other friends about how awesome you are as an investor. You get that for sure. It's guaranteed. It's 100%, you know? So so he's wrong
Mm,
in that sense, right?
mm,
So that's why I go back to like what do you want to do? Like if what you want
yeah,
to do is maximize is say I have this much cash, I want to
mm,
maximize its return. Like even that doesn't mean anything because
mm,
there's no such thing as return without risk. So the
mm,
real question is what is your risk return profile? So you could
yeah,
say I want to for sure make 5% a year forever. Okay,
mm,
then definitely don't compete on POS systems and don't invest in startups because there's nothing
yeah,
guaranteed about that at all.
yeah,
You want some very safe cash generating thing that's also
mm,
diversified because diversification trades maximum upside, which you won't
mm,
get with diversification, but it trades that
yes,
for more predictability, right?
mm,
Because as one thing goes up, the other one goes down. It's
yeah, yeah,
unbalanced, predictable, but your overall return in the best case is lower. That's what
mm,
diversification does. It's just math,
mm,
right? So
yes,
if you want that, you should have a diversified portfolio of crap and not like compete with stuff. That's bizarre,
mm,
right?
yeah,
That's probably not what you want to do. I mean, maybe,
mm.
or you typically what it is some percentage of your net worth you do want that way, and then other percent you don't. Like,
Yeah,
that's actually
for sure.
now the percent could be 90-10 or 10-90 or 50-50, whatever, and probably changes across your life as you want different things and value different things and so forth, right? So
How's your risk
that's the
profile in that?
answer. So the answer,
Yes,
the
yes.
idea of like you got to buy Google and not startups is just completely wrong because it's too simplistic. The question is, what
Mm,
are you trying to achieve? What kind of risk and reward you want? And what else do you want? So, for
mm,
example, if you say, sure, you could sell everything you're doing now, not have a business at all, and invest in Google or something like that, in a diversified portfolio, and then
mm.
you'd be bored and have no purpose and be unhappy. So,
Yeah.
is that okay? Or do you want something? So,
Mm,
it comes back to what is it that you're trying to, what do you want? What do you need? What are you trying to do? There's many
yeah.
tools available with different
Mm,
risk and reward profiles on them
mm, mm,
and you construct, hopefully, what makes sense.
mm,
And just any kind of advice that says like buy Google or don't buy Google, again in isolation
Mm.
is wrong simply because it's reductive, meaning it's so simplistic that it's wrong.
Mm. So we gotta like dig deeper, basically.
Or just there's a bigger picture of
Mm.
what you'd want to do with money.
Mm.
It should make you happy. Otherwise, what's the point? Are you
Mm.
preserving some? Because there's behaviors you do when you're preserving. Are
Mm.
you using it to
Huh.
do something else? Because that's the totally different behavior. You could be super risky. You could go get a loan. Now
Mm.
you have a whole lot more money. If
Mm.
you do well, you do way better than you ever could had you not taken the loan. If you do poorly, you will
That's
have done
true.
way worse than you would have had if you had not taken the loan.
Yeah, that's true.
That's why a loan is called leverage, and leverage magnifies both lows and highs. That's an
Mm.
example of increasing potential maximum upside, but also increasing risk. Should you do that? Again, like it depends on what you're doing and your risk,
Mm. For
preference.
sure.
For me, for example,
Mm.
I've been working for decades on
Mm.
companies, and I've gotten lucky a couple times, as you've pointed
Mm.
out, and so I don't want to lose that money. There's
Mm.
no amount of more upside growth, none, that's worth losing.
Yeah,
None.
yeah, yeah.
Right? So it's all super safe
Mm.
because get right. I already did the risky thing.
You
I
basically
did that.
invested in
You
your
know?
life. Yeah.
Yeah. So some people like a barbell model. I think
Oh,
Taleb also
barbell.
likes this, but the idea being that generally means you do two extremes and nothing in the middle is the general
Right.
idea of any
Oh, okay. So
barbell
like, yeah.
model. You know, and then the barbell is on one side I have like super safe, blah blah blah,
Mm-hmm.
boring, safe, predictable, blah blah blah,
Mm-hmm.
and the other side is like, oh my gosh, super risky, I don't know, crazy, whatever. Now,
Mm.
what percentage do you want on either side of the barbell? That again is going to be a very personal question and
Mm.
probably changes over your life and your
Mm.
circumstance. But
Mm.
anyway, these are two choices, however you distribute it. So for a lot of my life, so it's basically what I'm saying is for me, making companies was that end of the barbell that's super high risk, but also super high reward if it works out.
Right.
So everything else I put on the other end of the barbell, right?
Mm.
Anytime I had like, I actually got some money, don't lose it because I'm still risking over here, you know?
Yeah.
So is that right? No, it's not. That's just right for me.
Mm.
It's an
Understand.
idea. There's again,
Yeah.
finance is very personal, I feel. And
Yeah.
so there's no
Sure.
such thing as a framework that just works for everyone. I don't
Yeah.
believe that. I
Mm.
offer this as a framework that I like personally, and
Mm.
even the ratio there is something you have to decide personally too, even if you
Sure.
like that framework. But it's at minimum, this is good food for thought to start thinking about risk and money in a
Mm.
sophisticated way.
Just to kind of like, because I actually really want to understand kind of like your background and how you became this, I guess, entrepreneur, like this drive that's in you, this passion to build and to create companies. Like, where did you get this inspiration, Jason?
I don't know. I think there's on chromosome 13 it says G T T G T, and then you have to go,
Oh
wrestle a
man.
stripe to get an account. I don't know. There's something like that. I mean, why did
Hmm.
you do it? Someone
Uh,
tell you had to, or you decided to?
I I saw my dad do it for the whole life.
Okay.
I grew up
Yeah,
watching my
but
dad.
wait. Okay. And my dad was a professor at a university and couldn't ever imagine something like starting a company. Like being a
Wow.
professor at a university is the opposite of an entrepreneur.
Yeah, yeah.
It's where
It's
you get tenure and you do whatever.
yeah,
You never
yeah,
think
yeah.
about money ever, or whether
Yeah.
any customer wants your research,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
So it's the opposite. So all that goes to show is, I guess that's not why,
Hmm. Interesting.
right?
Interesting. Interesting. So, when did you start your first company?
If you don't count selling paper and pencils when I was a kid,
So
and
you were
if you
doing
don't
that since
count,
you were a kid.
yes,
Oh my God. Dude.
and if you don't
Yeah.
count, I mean, it wasn't really a company, but I would write
Yeah.
code for money when I was like 16, and then in high school, I was an
Wow.
intern at a company in town. But actual company, like really, I guess I was like 22.
22. Wow. So fresh out of college,
Yeah,
basically.
right, right.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
And out of your
I
friends,
worked
yeah.
during college and realized I didn't want to have a job.
Ah, okay. So that's also that spark that
Ooh.
I don't want to get stuck to a desk and be tied to a 9 to 5.
Well, I
I
was
want to do
definitely
my own.
tied to a desk. I just wanted to be my desk, right? You're,
Well, I mean, right now, right?
it's so funny. People say that, right? They're like, "Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I'm going to start my company. I don't want to
Yeah.
have a boss." They say, "No boss." I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
just all of your customers because they're the ones paying you. So just the
Actually,
only
that's true.
bosses you
That's
have is
true.
every
That's true.
single customer. Oh, and by
That's
the way,
true.
you kind of feel that way about every employee that you really like. You feel real like you owe them, and you feel
Yes.
real bad, and you want them, And it's just
That's true.
actually you
That's
have more
true.
bosses. You have more bosses than you could ever imagine. In
Shit.
fact, that's how I
You're right,
feel.
man. Damn
But you
it.
know what? It's
Yeah.
but it's yours, and
Yeah.
that's what makes all the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that's a really good post to post on X, man. Most 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 people say that they don't want a boss, but they end up with more bosses. It's just that it's the bosses that you kind of get to choose, especially if it's your team that you're hiring to join you on the journey.
Yeah.
That's a good one, man. Now, if you could pick three skills for someone to really look into acquiring in their younger days as they still have time, what would be those three skills that you would advise perhaps your 16-year-old self back in the days?
Three skills.
Hmm.
I mean, it's kind of hard not to just pick what I had because it worked
Hmm.
out.
Hmm. Which are?
I'm trying to think skills now. Writing code,
Okay.
selling and being good on my feet, like just
Hmm.
extemporaneously like this interview. We didn't
Yeah.
prepare at all with any
No.
questions.
Yeah.
Um, I even took improv for years. I did improv comedy.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
I mean, that wasn't until later, but still.
Uh-uh.
But uh,
So that's around communication then, right? So
well, let's see. I kind
coding.
of go back. Yeah, yeah, but I kind of go back. I almost want to not answer because I want to go back to the idea that everyone's got different skills and also weaknesses,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And um, sure, gaining more skills is good. No doubt
Yeah.
about that. If you're really bad at sales and you can't convince anyone of anything, that probably is an issue because
Mm.
you have to convince customers to buy, even if
Mm.
it's just on a website, even if you're not calling them. Still a
Mm.
website and pros and a funnel and then the pro like you still are convincing them just in the
Mm.
media that's not a phone call. But
Mm.
and then hiring employees is absolutely sales
Mm.
because they shouldn't join you. I mean, you're some little company that probably will fail. Like they
Mm.
probably shouldn't join you. You need some sales. If you were to raise money from investors, I'm not saying you should. I've obviously done
Mm.
both, raising and not raising, so
Mm.
whatever. But if you do, that's obviously sales again.
Yeah.
So it kind of wherever you look, there's sales. So it's true that if that's uncomfortable, you don't know how. Would that be useful to develop that skill? Yes, but even then,
Mm.
you could say, well, what else would have to be true? And the answer could be a co-founder who is very, very good at sales. Oh, okay,
Mm.
so one of you is good at writing code, the other one is good at sales. That's a good duo. That's actually terrific. So
Yes.
once again, even although it would be good if you were better at sales, that'd
Hmm.
probably be better. It's not
Mm.
necessarily even the answer because we could
Mm.
solve it in other ways. So I
Mm.
would go back to the idea. A different thing I'll say on that though. A lot of times people say this is a strength and this is a weakness. I even just
Mm.
said that sort of just now, and I actually
Mm.
don't like that either. And I'll give you an
Mm.
example.
Mm.
Um, there's this thing called Strengths Finder, all
Yes.
one word,
Yes.
Strengths Finder. You
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
So we don't need to get into all the details because it's
Yeah.
boring, but basically it's another one of these, not quite personality, but kind of your proclivities. You do this, you do that. You're like that. You have these weaknesses, you have these strengths, sort of a
Mm.
test. And never mind
Mm.
if it's scientific or not. Everyone who pushes this says that it is,
Yeah.
and everyone who likes another one says that it isn't. Who knows? Okay, but never mind.
And
Okay,
it's a good
so my
business. And
yeah,
it's a
it's good.
good
It's a good
business.
business, right? So whatever,
Yeah.
it's fine. But it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so my number three out of 32 or 36
Mm.
or whatever it is, my number three strength, quote unquote, in Strengths Finder is competition or competitive.
Ah.
I'm competitive. And okay, yeah, I am competitive, right? That's fine, whatever. Now, is that a strength? I mean, it's called Strengths Finder. That's the name of the the system.
Yeah.
So it's a strength, but is it a strength? Is
Mm.
being competitive a strength? Is it a strength for being competitive at a company?
Mm.
Well, if I'm in a sales call and I want to win versus a competitor,
Mm.
a competing product, then being competitive is a strength.
Of
Really
course.
wanting to win the sales call is
Yeah.
good.
Yes.
Okay. Winning an employee to work here instead of work there is good.
Yes, for
Okay.
sure.
What about if I'm in a meeting with eight other people and we're throwing ideas around and trying to work something out? Now is being competitive a strength?
Not really, for sure.
No, it's worse than not a strength.
Mm,
It's a negative. It's a
mm,
detriment. If I
mm,
was competitive about my ideas, that
mm.
would harm the team,
Yeah.
harm the final output that we make.
Yeah.
It would harm individual people and it would harm the work, the professional work we're
Yes.
trying to do. It
Yeah.
harms everything.
Yeah.
It's bad. It's terrible.
Mm,
So is being competitive a strength?
mm.
And we
It
can
depends on the
see,
context. Yeah.
yeah, we can see it depends on the context. So what
Mm.
do you do with that? Assuming that I am competitive and assuming StrengthsFinder works. Okay, so so let's not call it a strength. Let's call it a proclivity or something that I do
Mm.
or something, a thing that I
I
am,
like that
right?
word. Yeah.
And
Mm.
then we go back to the question, my one of these questions. Well, what should I do where
Mm.
being competitive is a strength? I should put
Mm.
myself in a situation as much as I can where being
Mm.
competitive is a strength so that what I
Mm.
am naturally, what I do naturally, what comes naturally, what I do automatically, what I even like
Mm.
is what should be done, right? I
Mm.
need to put myself in a situation so that it's all aligned. Then
That's
good
true.
things happen. If I put
That's
myself
true.
in a situation constantly, like if I was a therapist or something, right?
Mm.
Then I would
Being
constantly be battling what I am. Well, that's horrible for me. I'm clearly not going to be very good for the other person either. I'm
yeah.
not going to be super skilled at, like again, it's worse for everyone, including myself selfishly. It's
Mm.
worse for me too,
Mm.
Don't
Mm.
do that. So even the strengths and weaknesses that even I said, it's not really that. It's that you
Mm.
have these things, you maybe miss or have opposites of these things. Again, what situations can I put myself in? So
Mm.
if I'm not a salesy, I
Mm.
could decide that's a skill I want to develop, in which case go for it, awesome.
Mm.
Or you could decide that's not me. I
Mm.
should stay in my zone where I'm amazing
Mm.
rather than work very hard to just be okay. Why am I
That's true.
doing that?
Yeah.
I should spend my time where I'm amazing. And then I should hook up with other people where they are also amazing, where I would only be okay.
I
Then
love that.
together as a team, we're amazing at freaking everything. That should be our goal.
I
We
love
should
that.
all together, indeed, we should be amazing at everything. That would be good. But
Yeah.
no one of us is going to be amazing at everything. That's silly
Yes. Yeah, that's
and
true.
untrue, right? So
Yeah.
the goal is to build that. I often call that at WP Engine, I call that puzzle pieces. We're completing the puzzle. We are all
Mm.
puzzle pieces. We have nubbies sticking out where we're strong. We have holes where it's like, right? And we get and we're all puzzle. We're all different. We all have different
Mm.
puzzle pieces. We
Mm.
need all sorts of different things so that together we have all the things. There's
That's
no
beautiful.
special human who has all the things. That doesn't exist.
Mm.
We're not going to try to hire that person. It
Yeah,
doesn't exist. And we don't expect any of us to be that.
that's beautiful.
But we
That's
do need
beautiful.
to analyze, but what are we? And what do we need?
Mm.
Not because any one human is a bad person, but rather
Mm.
because as a team, we are missing something that the team needs.
Mm.
And so when we hire the next person, they need that stuff because
Yeah.
they need to
Yeah.
fill that gap that we
Yes.
collectively have, right? Now you're designing a team. You're constructing
Mm.
a team that's
Mm.
amazing,
Mm.
while letting humans be human, which is that they have the things.
Yeah.
So you could still say strengths, weaknesses if you want, but hopefully I've made the case that even that's not accurate. And it's really
Yes.
about arranging what we are and trying to build together what we need in terms of humans
Mm.
or what the company is if we're talking about like a solo founder.
Now, just to kind of elaborate on the team side, I can't really fathom the idea of running a company with 1,200 employees. Like we've got close to 100 now. And man, it's still a lot. So can you talk to me
Yes.
about how you manage that, kind of like your structure, or perhaps you don't even have a structure? I mean, I'm down to hear how you run your thing.
I don't think our structure is special.
Mm.
There are certainly breakpoints where it feels different, it acts different, it is
Mm.
different. And so
Mm.
you've seen that already, a couple of them. I think you could maybe gesture at what they are, but of course it's going to, there's not like a specific number where it's
Mm.
magically instantly
Mm.
changes. But for example, when you first need a manager,
Mm.
it's around 10, 12, who knows,
Mm.
something like that.
Yeah.
And there's some group, maybe it's support, maybe it's engineering. There's some group that's like the biggest group,
Uh-huh.
and they need a manager.
Mm.
And so you have a manager, and that's the first time someone who's a manager rather than a doer gets
Mm.
hired.
Mm.
The culture is not designed for that. No one's used to that. Everyone's used to just being in every meeting.
Yeah.
and it's a different kind of hire. Like the skill
Mm,
set is not like anyone else who's there.
mm,
And rather than making something, they're making a team, which is a
mm,
weird, different thing. You can't really measure it, et cetera. And so I think that and then the communication changes around that because
mm.
now, well, not everyone's in every meeting. It's going through
Yeah,
some stuff's going through the manager, or just in general, even setting the manager aside, you're just not going to have 12 people in every meeting. That's stupid.
yeah,
But that means not everyone sees everything, just
yeah.
aside from a manager. So there's something around like 10, 12, 8, 15, like you name it, where
Mm,
there's things like management or not everyone's in the meeting. And it while that sounds like not a lot, it really has a lot of repercussions and it feels different. So that by the
mm,
time you have 20 people, it really feels nothing like when it was eight.
mm,
And so where's the exact line? Oh, I don't know. That's not really
mm,
it. But like at 8 and 20, it's certainly the line was somewhere in there for sure, you know? And I think maybe around 50 or 80, 70,
mhm,
something like this, you get another layer of management in the bigger things. Things like people stuff, like just things the human needs becomes enough that you kind of need help there, like
mm,
onboarding new people, or someone
mm,
has the thing with medical stuff. I don't know, like just things start happening frequently enough.
mm.
You need that. Finance gets hard enough that you need like a kind of a real finance person and not just
Mm.
entering things into a thing. You know, you kind of
Yeah,
need
yeah.
someone really organizing it.
Yes.
Um, just things start appearing. And again, it's not that you hired some finance person and that changes everything. That's not what I
Mm,
mean. I'm just
mm,
listing some of the things that appear. It's really just the size of it that's what's different. And these are some of the things that appear as a result.
mm.
And probably around 200, 300, something like that feels different again. Yeah, 1,000 or something feels different again. I've heard it said it's like threes and tens, meaning like
Threes and tens. Okay.
3, 10, 30, 100, 300, 1,000, three
Right.
thousand, like that,
Right.
right? So sort of powers of three, except rounding up,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah.
Um, that feels about right. I think the
Mm,
numbers I said was what felt like for me at WP Engine, which
mm.
isn't quite that because life is usually not as nice as these little
Yeah.
things.
Of
But
course.
I think as an order of magnitude, it's probably
Hmm.
about right. It's probably yeah, it's probably about right. Um, I would say a very interesting moment is around certainly 500, maybe
Mm,
earlier.
mm.
What happens is and notice a lot of this is about people and not process. I mean,
Yes.
processes also change, but really it's
Yes.
the people that make it change more than like
Mm,
technology or the
mm.
law or something, you know? Um, well, so at 500, this certain weird thing happens, which is
Mm.
I've once had it described to me this way, and then it was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly it, which is you're like a little town in the
Mm-hmm.
following way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, While everyone doesn't know everyone's name and face at 500, it's too much. Like you don't
Mm,
quite know. Maybe you recognize a little, but like you don't actually know everyone's name, right? You can't.
mm,
Uh, but you're small enough that anything that happens that's significant, the word gets around to everyone.
mm. Okay.
But there's also enough people that there's shit happening all the time, all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So everything that happens to a human being that's significant is happening like multiple times a week. Someone's getting married, someone's
Yeah.
getting divorced. Someone's
Mm,
having a baby, someone has
mm,
a close death in the family, someone
mm.
commits suicide,
Oh.
right?
Mm,
Like things happen. Someone goes to jail,
mm,
someone flips out and gets real weird.
mm,
Like stuff happens.
mm,
And so, and at 500, it's happening often enough that it's a lot. And yet, it's small enough that everyone hears all of it. And so it's like this overwhelming amount of humanity.
mm,
And not just bad, it's good stuff too. Like, getting married is
mm,
good, having a baby is
mm.
good,
Yeah.
but it's just kind of a lot. It's like kind of a lot to take to
Yeah.
have
And
so much going on. And yet everyone hears it.
mm,
So it's a funny, again, very human thing. There's nothing to do with processes that
mm.
happens. It kind of creeps up on you, and you're just like, someone's having a baby, and you're like, again, right? Like, it's kind of funny. Like, obviously
Uh,
not in a bad way.
yeah.
It's funny, and
Yeah.
someone gets cancer, and you're like, okay, well, I mean, that's like, the whatever the eighth time this year someone's gotten
Mm,
cancer, so
mm,
whatever. And
mm.
it's not whatever as in you don't care, you
Yeah.
do. It's more just like, of here it comes again, here comes another
Mm.
thing. And man, it has nothing to do with the product or customers or investors
Yeah.
or money, like
Yeah.
And so it's hard, and there's not like anything
Mm,
you can do about it. There's nothing to
mm,
do. There's not,
mm.
you don't fix it.
Yeah.
It's just what it is.
Yeah.
So I know I've kind of
How
dwelled on it, but I guess I'm trying
mm,
to just give the idea that some of these things are just not obvious until you're there, and it's not like you did anything wrong. They're just
mm.
hard.
How do you manage the emotional kind of like weight? Because you obviously care
Yeah,
for the whole
right.
team. Yeah. How do you not let it affect you too much personally and kind of like let your team handle it? It was was that like a learning process for you in the
I don't
journey?
know. I think, there's those studies that show that what is it, psychopaths who don't feel emotion like that, like they don't care. Like
Yeah.
they understand like, oh, that's bad for you, but they don't like feel anything about that,
Mm,
right?
mm.
And CEOs are very likely to have that trait. And you can kind of see why that would be useful. Now, on the one hand, you
Mm,
could say, well, maybe that makes them
mm,
evil. And it's true that it could
mm,
be that since emotions aren't telling you that something is wrong or bad,
mm,
it could
mm,
be that you're evil and, because
mm,
nothing's governing it.
mm.
Obviously, it doesn't have to be that way because you can tell with
Yeah.
your brain
Yeah.
whether something is
Yeah.
good or bad, and
Yeah.
right or wrong. You don't need emotions to know that. But you can see why that would be useful if you were
Mm,
intellectual and ethical and good,
mm,
but also every single thing that happened didn't change your mood. That would actually
mm.
be quite useful in a
Yeah.
senior leadership position, and it
Yeah.
is. And so that's one answer is, yeah, like if
Mm,
you're a very empathetic person, empathy meaning that you feel what others feel or you feel
yeah.
when other people do. If you're highly empathetic, it might be really difficult for you to be the CEO.
Mm,
That may
mm.
not be a good position. I'm not saying you can't. In fact, I've said many, many times in this call that I think there's
Yeah.
many ways around things,
Yes. Of
but that
course.
might be a toughie. You might need a lot of compensation in
Mm,
terms of other people and other techniques and other
mm,
things. You might have to do stuff to make that work,
mm.
right?
Yeah.
That's going to be a problem that you need to solve. Not unsolvable, but you're going to
Mm,
have to work on that, or you
yeah.
might decide you don't want a big company after all. You want a small family style company and not
Mm,
do that,
yeah.
right? There's many things you could decide, but
Mm.
um, yeah, now, of course, people have different techniques and I don't know, it's a very personal thing again.
It's
I pretty easily compartmentalize that kind of
right.
stuff. Yeah, you
Okay.
just put in a box.
Yeah.
But it is true that sometimes you just have a day or it just hits you or something, and it's
Mm,
just kind of overwhelming, and like maybe you just have to deal with that when it shows up,
mm.
you know?
Understand. Makes sense. Dude, I've noticed that more and more people in the US, I'm not sure if this is based on facts or not, but it seems like there's a growing trend on the need of therapy for especially senior leadership
Mhm.
people.
Yeah.
Do you have this in your company? Is this something that you see that's happening?
I mean, we don't have therapists in the company,
Mm,
but it is definitely true in America that the younger you are, the more likely it is that you have a therapist.
wow, interesting. Hmm,
Yeah, it's like a thing. And in fact, the younger generations use a lot of therapy language and just normal speak.
I see. Like I'm depressed. I'm
Well, or
suffering
or
anxiety
stuff like
or
I need to create some space for me for myself this weekend. Like that's not a
yeah.
thing I would ever think to say. I would
Yeah,
say
me
something like
too.
I just got to be alone. I need some
Yeah,
me
yeah.
time, or something is
Yeah,
what I would say,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, we're saying the same thing, but they're even using that language, which then
Mm,
communicates to the other person, which is probably a really healthy development, by the way. I'm not making fun of anyone
mm,
for it. It's probably
mm,
healthy because by using a term that's a little more, I don't want to say clinical, but has specific meaning, it also
mm,
communicates to the other person, hey, I'm not blowing you off. I'm not passive aggressively saying I don't want to be friends anymore.
mm.
I I need to create space. Like I need to literally
Yeah.
do that. It's not about you. So you're conveying all of this at the same time by saying
Yeah.
that. So it's maybe a very efficient,
Mm,
useful encoding of what you need. And then the other
mm,
person knows what it means to give you the space. And
mm.
so probably it's a good code.
I was listening to this podcast and it seems like more and more harm is actually being done to the younger generations based on the use of social media. Uh, how's the age group in your company, Jason, if you don't mind sharing? Do
We
you
have a
have a
big
mix?
range.
Okay.
Yeah, we have
Okay.
a big range. Yeah.
Do you hire quite a lot of Gen Zs in your company, or do you usually look for someone?
I mean, off the top of my head, I don't know
Okay.
what percentage is in what generation, but the last time we looked at things like age, it was all over the
Yeah.
place.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. Do you feel that that has any positive or negative effects in the workplace at all in terms of the age groups? And you see a difference between working with a colleague who's younger, who's older. Let's say they're both
Probably, but I
engineers. Yeah.
think individual differences may overwhelm those group differences.
Okay. Okay.
Like there are
Makes
group
sense.
differences, but individuals vary within the group so much.
Mm,
The group doesn't really help that much in understanding what the person would be
mm,
like.
mm, mm.
So
Uh,
another way of saying that is like, okay, so millennials have some normal curve about some trait, and
yeah.
Gen Z has some normal curve, and they're separated significantly.
Yeah.
So you could say that there's a difference between their averages, and
Mm,
it's significant. Okay,
mm,
but there's a lot of overlap in the big centers there,
yeah.
right?
True.
And if they're wide, if they're narrow normal
Mm,
curves, then you can really peg someone with that. But if they're
mm,
wide
mm,
and they're both wide,
mm.
there may be a significant difference in their averages. And yet, since they're so wide, any individual in any one could be anywhere,
That's true. That's true.
right?
That's true.
So that's what I mean specifically by the individual differences are larger than the group difference. And so while the group difference can be true, it
Mm,
kind of doesn't matter. Like, so, but here's this one person, and since the variance is so high on the normal curve, like that person could still be anything, no matter what age they are, and so it doesn't really matter what generation they're in. So
I
if
like
you
that
took them all
mindset.
together, sure, you
Mm.
get an average, but who cares when you're dealing with one person? It doesn't matter what average they're in any given group. It's just irrelevant.
I actually really like that perspective because it kind of removes the labels and kind of like the presumption that we go into the discussions with these people as well. Like when
Right.
we're going in with a blank slate, like, hey, this guy, he might be young, but he could
Yeah.
be, because of his background, his training, and whatnot. So, yeah.
Well, just who he is. It doesn't. I mean, so like this person is already a heavily biased sample of the population because you're talking to them at all.
Mm,
Like if
mm,
you're hiring anything, a designer,
yeah.
okay, well, almost no one's a designer of any age. So it's already super biased
Mm,
in some way that I don't know. I don't know what it is,
mm,
but it is. And so who
mm,
cares what oh, it's a man, it's a woman,
mm,
they're American, they're Thai, they're this or that. Um, they're already some special segment of something or other. So who cares? Like, what difference does that
mm,
make? What are they? Like,
mm.
I mean,
I
who
love that
cares?
perspective, man. I think we need more founders like you in this world, Jason. Like someone who's really open, who's really, don't put labels in on people here in perhaps in Asia. We like to label, and with that
Mhm.
label, we have this kind of presumptions about certain groups like kids
Mhm.
and whatnot. So, uh, I think
But
if
that's
we
the funny
approach,
thing. There can be group differences that can exist,
yeah,
and yet it doesn't
mm,
matter for the individual at all.
mm,
Like that's the
yeah,
funny thing about it. So it's
I
not
like
that
that.
you throwing away, like if there could be group differences,
Mm,
and if you just ignore it and pretend they're not there,
mm,
that's bad science,
yeah, for sure.
right? On the other hand, if the variation within the group is very big, as it
Mm,
often is,
yeah,
then it's
it is.
also true math that
Yeah,
the variation inside is bigger than the group difference. The average may be this far apart, but the
mm,
individuals are varying over this wide space.
yeah,
So the individual variation is physically, mathematically bigger than that group difference. And so
I love that.
here we're agreeing with all of the data together and concluding correctly that the differences among individuals is bigger than the group
Mm,
difference, and therefore the group difference is not useful in making decisions or presumptions.
mm.
Not because we're ethical or good, literally math. Like right
I
back
love
to the
that. I
math.
love that.
Right? That's why you should treat people that way, because math.
Mm. That's a good way to look at things, man.
I mean,
Thanks.
also it's a nice way to treat people. It's also a good way to
Yeah,
treat people. But
yeah, yeah,
even if you don't buy that argument that it's good to treat people that way, no, numbers and meritocracy and blah blah blah. Okay, fine. Let's go to the math.
yeah.
It causes the same conclusion. So there you go. That's why it's right.
That's a really good perspective, man. Dude, amazing. So I do want to understand what is in place for you right now as a leader your company right now to kind of make sure that you're functioning at your best. So there's some CEOs, they have this kind of like, rule that they work for the first half of the day, and the rest of the day they spend time with family and do things that they love so that they are
Right.
always at their peak. How's
Hmm.
how's life for you now?
Yeah, I think that's pretty smart if once you get to the point where you can do that. I think
Mm,
when you're getting things started, you probably don't have the luxury of spending your time that way.
mm,
But if you know that that's the end goal and that's that you're going to design a company in the end to where that's what's happening, that's
mm,
great.
mm.
It helps the other people in your life deal with you and support you while you're not able to spend
Grinding.
half the
Yeah.
day with them, right?
Yeah.
Knowing that you're constructing something where that will be the case, for
Mm,
example. Also, what kind of company do you make? What kind of business are you in? If you wanted to do what you just said, um, and you didn't want to hire a lot of people,
mm.
then you'd better not make a product that has to work 24/7.
That's true. That's a tip right
Okay,
there.
then don't. Then don't. Right?
Then
So
don't,
just
then
again, it
don't.
goes back to like
Yeah.
if that's your goal, if that's in the sand, what else has to be true? Okay, like that's an example of what has to be true.
Yeah.
So I think it's great to put that goal in the sand, build a company around that, whatever that is going to mean, right?
Mm,
Um, and that's smart. And then as usual, everyone's different about how they where their energy is. Some people
mm.
think better in the morning and then they work out in
Yeah.
the afternoon when their brain's not working or whatever. I mean, of course you do whatever
Works for you. Yeah.
we want. I do think that kind of integration of who am I with the workday or work
Mm,
week too. I think
mm,
there's a rhythm over the week, and that's another useful thing to do. You
mm,
kick off Monday and you
mm,
really get a
mm.
lot done Tuesday, Wednesday, Fridays for sitting back and being strategic. There's that kind of attitude as well, not just
Mm,
during the day. So there's a lot of things you can modify. I mean, it has to be smart because of course there's only so many hours per day.
mm,
And so if you can select the activity
mm,
based on your, let's say, personal efficiency, you could
mm,
say, right?
mm, mm.
Then surely then two people with the same number of hours, which everyone has the same number of hours because
Yeah.
we don't have a choice.
Yeah.
But someone who's more efficient with it will
Mm,
just be more productive, more
mm,
effective, maybe happier,
mm,
maybe, maybe.
mm. Are
You got a
you?
chance, you got
Yeah.
a shot. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Um, so that's just sort of stands to reason that it'd be good to optimize hours across days and the time of day, given that that's what you got.
Mm. How do you personally manage your time right now? Do you have like a rhythm that you go through?
Not very well. So a lot of the people I work with
Mm,
are in Europe, and so that
okay.
means my mornings are all in. I'm in America, so my mornings are their afternoons, and that's what works. And so a lot of times my mornings are meetings.
Right.
Is that um, probably something like 10 to 3 would be my good productive
Mm.
heads down hours, but I don't
Uh-huh.
usually allocate it that way. I do often try to do stuff like the gym uh, that I go to. I can run there from the house. I run
Right.
there and I do the thing, run back, and like that's my little normal routine. And it's really dead at 1 o'clock p.m. So
Interesting.
often I try to get like a 1 to 3, 1 to 3:30 block,
Hmm.
so I can go do that without waiting or anything. So it's pretty fast and,
Yeah.
and more enjoyable.
Yeah.
Um, and then just work later, etc. But just
Yeah.
take that in the middle. This is
Mm,
one of the advantages of working from home, obviously.
mm,
And so I think whenever you can do that, um, that's the advantage. There's lots of disadvantages from working from home,
mm,
mostly in the social cohesion and
mm,
communication, etc.
mm.
But one of the good things is you can try to integrate life, and that's
Yeah,
awesome. I mean, how could that not be good?
for sure. So do you guys have a physical office at all now, or
Oh yeah.
okay.
We have offices in Austin, Omaha,
Mm,
which is also in the US,
yep.
in Limerick, Ireland, in
Right.
London, in
Ah,
Krakow, Poland, in
wow.
Singapore, and in Brisbane in Australia.
And do you fly around to meet the team?
Sometimes. I mean, before COVID, a lot more. After COVID,
Mm,
even though of course, it's not COVID anymore, but still, like
yeah,
it's kind of disrupted everything.
yeah.
And we do have a lot of people that are distributed now. A lot of
Mm,
people work, even though we have offices, we don't mandate that people go there, and so they
I see.
generally don't. And so now
Aha, okay.
that changes depending on the country. There's like in
Right,
London, a lot more people come in.
right.
But uh, yeah, like in Austin, we used to have 450 people on a typical
Wow.
workday, and now it's more like 15, 20.
Whoa, wow, wow.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
wow. Whoa.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay. Okay. So
yeah,
so things have really, really changed since
yes,
COVID. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
And what is the actual advantage of having these sites in these countries? Is it just to kind of have a place where you guys can gather, or because
Yeah,
I
although
mean the
at
product
this point, it's
yeah.
not by choice, it's by lease.
Right, right, right,
Remember we
right.
said at the very top something about we said something about like your customers might stay because they really want the product, or they might stay because they have to.
Yeah,
All right, here's
yeah.
an example.
Okay, lease down. No
We have a
choice.
lease. It's a
Yeah.
7-year lease. Guess how long you're going to
Okay.
be there, whether you like it or
7 years. Yeah.
not.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
I
Makes
mean,
sense. Yeah.
it's good
Mm.
business, I guess, but
Mm.
their
Mm.
business would be even better if they didn't do that.
For sure, man. Uh, Final question, Jason. What does living life at your peak mean to you?
It's a good question because it sounds like something you should do.
Mm. Mm.
Um, to me, it means, I guess it means peak meaning the best that you can be,
Yeah.
which doesn't necessarily mean things like the most productive, quote unquote.
Mm.
Maybe it's happiest, not clear, because
Mm.
you can be happy and not accomplish anything, and you might decide that's not the mixture you want, you know?
Mm. Mm.
But some of the things you were just talking about, are you filling the hours with the things that make the most sense for that hour? That feels more like peak. If you were doing the
Mm.
opposite, that feels like trough. Even
Mm.
if it's the same activities, it's still not peak. So,
Mm.
yes, being efficient and stuff, but because you're being smart, you know what I mean?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
yeah, you're using the time well. Also, another thing that brings to mind when I think of peak, I think of peaking in athletics, which
Mm.
is a technique where like the Olympics are coming up or the world trials or some kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? And you want to be the best you can be there.
Yeah.
In other words, you want to peak then, as they would
Yeah.
say in athletics.
Mm.
And so there's theories about how you practice on the run up to peaking.
Mm.
So for example, what's never right is you work really, really hard and exhaust yourself, killing
Mm.
yourself, and then the day comes and now you're exhausted.
So
That's
you're not
not
a
how
big
you
fan of Goggins then?
whatever, but like that's
Yeah.
not how Olympic. I
Yeah.
mean,
Mm.
let's just say that's not how gold medals are forged, and so that's
Yeah.
not how you peak, right?
Mm.
So it's usually some kind of thing of like going really hard, but like 2 months earlier you're going extra hard.
Mm.
And then
Mm.
you're kind of actually backing off a little so that the body's recovering and healing, but stronger, so that when you go
Mm.
out there, you're actually at peak, stuff like that. Now, I
Huh.
don't know all the details, and I'm
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
trying to be that person.
Yeah.
I'm drawing the general picture.
Mm.
Just the main idea is that when I think of peaking, I think of also intelligent rest,
Mm. I like
right?
that. Yeah.
Just going hard all the time is certainly not peak. There's no
Mm.
athlete who goes hard all the time and then
No.
is also in their best form.
Mm.
That's not how it works. And so, of course, you can rest too much and be lazy, and that's also not peak.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's why I say intelligent rest. What does that mean? I'm not really sure. I'm not an expert in that.
Mm.
Maybe you have to pay attention to how your own body works and how your own mind works. Maybe you have to listen to people like that and whatever. I
Yeah.
don't know. I'm not the expert, but I do know that you need rest, and it's not, right? And so if you're resting correctly, that's part of peak also. So even though at that moment it may not feel like peak, it is part of peak, in
Mm.
fact. And that's a tricky balance that when you say
Mm.
peak, I think a combination of efficient activity and
Mm.
this kind of intelligent rest so that that's good. I guess if I could make a super simple example, if you don't get enough sleep, there's no way you're performing at peak when you're awake.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I had more awake hours. Yeah, but you're certainly not peak. Certainly not, right?
That's
So
true. That's
getting
true.
more sleep which means you're number one, asleep. That's rest. And
If
two,
you
like
can
you have
sleep, right?
fewer,
Yeah.
yeah, you have fewer hours to be productive. And yet we know that's peak for sure.
Mm,
So that would be a simple example of what I'm trying to get at here, you know?
mm.
So you say peak, I guess being efficient with your time and intelligent with your rest so that that time is even better. And man, also, I am not doing that well enough. I can do a lot better. I am not operating at peak right now. So that's a good reminder for me as well.
Yeah, that's good, man. That's good. Dude, thank you for your time. Thank you for spending the hour here. And I'm sure that this episode is going to bless a lot of people. And I pray that this is going to go out and create a good impact to the rest of the world as well. Thank you for your time, man. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you, man.